and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and on this week's episode, I'm joined by Teagasc Grass Tin Advisor Joseph Dunphy and Dairy Beef 500 Advisor Fergal Maguire to get an update on grass around the country, tips before the last rotation and Grassland Farmer of the Year competition. Joseph and Fergal, you're both very welcome. There's huge variation in grass growth around the country. And Joseph, can you give an update on what's happening in the west and the south of the country?
If we look at the figures from last week, Catherine, from Pasture Base Ireland, the average farm covers around the country are 719 kilos of dry matter per hectare. The pre-grazing yields are in around 1600, and the growth versus demand is 31 kilos of dry matter, demand is 37, and there's about 19 days of grass ahead on Irish dry stock farms. However, as you said, Catherine, variation is the order of the day. There's huge variation within provinces, but there's also huge variation within counties, especially up my side of the country, Catherine, and especially farms that have had enough rainfall received. Growths are strong in the 50s and the 60s. However, as you said, there's also farms that haven't received rainfall who are back in the 20s and 30s and struggling at the minute.
That's great, Joseph. And Fergal, I suppose it's a difference in the east. How does the east compare?
Just looking at the figures, the rainfall figures there up until yesterday. Now I think Grange, they had 8 mil of rain, 8 mil of rain for the whole month of August. Now I know this morning there's a good sup of rain. I'd say maybe 6 or 7 mil of rain fell this morning. So that's our first good sup of rain. Just looking at what's happening on farms, a lot of again, there's variation in counties. Parts of the county got rain there on Saturday, parts of the county didn't get rain on Saturday. Aidan Maguire, his growth rate is 15, and his average farm cover is just 450. So again, then looking further down the south, so then down into the southeast, they probably got a bit more rainfall than up towards Meath and Louth. Growth rates is probably running around 30, closer to 30, and farm covers is above 500. So look, there is massive variation, and within counties, especially in the drier farms, growth rate is low.
And I suppose based on the rainfall there, you mentioned, Fergal, and a lot of farmers had been suffering from drought. What are the key actions that farmers should be taking in the coming days and weeks?
Right, so if covers are starting to slip below 500, you're going to have to try and reduce demand somehow. So on some of the dairy calf to beef farms, what they're doing is they're housing some of the finishing cattle. So particularly bullocks that are going to be finished in November, they're housing them cattle and putting them on silage and meal. Otherwise, they would have been feeding them silage out in the fields, and they'd have been on sacrifice paddocks. So that's what some of the farmers are doing. Look, we got a good sup of rain now. There this morning, so I'd be advising farmers to go out with fertiliser. I'd probably be advising if your nutrient management plan allows to go out with a compound fertiliser. It just help recovery of the sward, putting that bit of P and K along with the nitrogen. There is going to be a lot, because we're coming from such a dry period. There is going to be lots of mineralization and nitrogen. So I am expecting a burst in growth. But the farmers this week would need to be getting out fertiliser rather than leaving it towards September, when we all know that there's less growth for every kilo of N put out in September compared to putting it there in the next week or so. So get out fertiliser, try and reduce demand. So that could be housing finishing stock. So there's cattle coming up towards finishing, so housing them finishing stock, and maybe introducing silage just to slow down rotation. So you're not looking for rotational length on the drier farms any more than 30 days from now on. Even on the heavier farms, you'd be trying to push out your rotation length to 30 days. But look, the key is trying to reduce demand and pushing out your covers or your rotation length. So that's really the key message of what farmers are doing now on dairy beef farms.
That's great, Fergal. And I suppose possibly in the west, Joseph, there's areas that would have had received adequate rainfall, and there's also some farms that would have had suffered from drought. What actions should they be considering?
Yeah, so Catherine, like the key considerations, as Fergal said, there is, we're moving on to the different time of the year in terms of we're looking at autumn grass targets. We're looking at maybe building a little bit of cover on farms for the latter half of the year, and I suppose the aim is to build the rotation length on farms to build grass for later on in the autumn. So what we want to do during August is to extend from a 21-day rotation if farms were on that to closer to a 30-day rotation and stay in leafy covers of between 14 and 1500 with that. So if farmers are growing good grass in terms of they've received adequate rainfall, if they're growing up in this the 60s and the 70 kilos of dry matter per day, then it would be a consideration maybe to tidy up a paddock or two over this week, in terms of taking out for surplus bales. But if covers are getting high, if covers are strong above over 2000 and growth is strong on the farm. But that's the key consideration. Have a quick look at your calendar, a quick thought. When was the last time you were in that paddock? If you were last in that paddock only 3 weeks ago, then you need to slow the rotation on the farm. But out from say 21 days to closer to the 30 days, as Fergal was saying.
And I suppose on the last episode, David Wall discussed soil fertility, and you mentioned there the applications of compound fertiliser. Fergal, what advice have you to achieve the autumn targets, and what are the autumn targets the farmers should be looking at that Joseph has outlined?
Yeah, so look, the big target would be just to get grazing as long as possible on the farm into the back end without affecting grass growth in the spring. So look, again, the big thing at this time of the year is to start building covers. So look, your plant is coming into a vegetative stage at this stage. So look, I know it's funny saying this in the middle of a dry spell when lads are looking for grass, but in another couple of weeks there'll be no harm letting covers build over to 2000. Just and putting your average farm cover over 750. Just that you do have grass built up there for the final rotation from October onwards. Because if you don't start, if we don't get building grass now, you're going to run out of grass very quickly in October. So you could be housing that as a cattle towards the end of October rather than getting them out grazing in November. So look, keep your rotation out to 30 to 35 days, and then start building your cover. So that's the way of doing it. Is when growth takes off, is allow covers to go over to 2000 and increase your average farm cover. Look, in terms of fertilizer, on the higher stock farms, fertilizer needs to be guided this week to give you any chance of building up into them covers.
That's great, Fergal. I suppose really farmers are looking at what targets they're trying to achieve from October on when they're closing up for the final rotation. And we often say in the springtime, the actions achieved now are really what we're trying to build up for spring next year. What are the targets farmers should be achieving from October on to have grass next spring?
Yeah, so look, they need to be covered. So there will be a certain proportion of the covers are going to be over 2000. So look, again, as I was saying, it's from now on that you're going to be building covers. If you start building covers from the middle of September, so if you leave the rotation at 21 days, 24, 25 days, up to the middle of September, you're going to run out of grass very quickly. So look, the big key is to push on your rotation length especially for the higher stock farms between 30 and 35 days. So that'll allow that when you go into the 4th of October, when you start closing paddocks, that there will be enough grass there in your final rotation to allow you to graze out maybe until the second week, or depending on your farm, whether it's a heavy farm or a dry farm, to graze out towards the middle of November. Because without compromise, so you'll have 60% of your farm hopefully grazed by the 1st of November, and then the remaining 40% will get you out towards the middle of November. So look, the big key will be is to start stretching out your rotation length, and that'll allow you to build covers. So they're the big things. Is for September is to put out your rotation length towards 30 to 35 days, and then build your covers over 2000. So your average farm cover will be over 750.
I suppose, Joseph, based on what Fergal has said there, what difference will there be for farmers that would have incorporated clover, or how would they close up their farm differently this autumn?
Yeah, so Catherine, is great. A lot of farmers have both reseeded with clover this spring and oversown into existing grass wards as well, to get the benefits from fixing nitrogen plus also increased animal performance. And I suppose the key thing from now on, Catherine, is to continue to graze, these grass clover swards at lower covers of 1,000 to 1,200. This will help to get light to the base of the sward to develop that clover plant, and also graze the grass clover paddocks towards the end of your final rotation. So if you're, say for instance, if you're maybe getting out until the middle of November, try and graze them in early November so as not to leave a cover on them over the winter.
Aidan Maguire was the 2021 Grassland Farmer of the Year, and he's hosting a farm walk on the 31st of August. I know Aidan was on the podcast when he won the award, but Fergal, can you give an update for farmers as to what they should expect on the day?
Aidan Maguire is truly an exceptional farmer, a grass farmer. That's what he's exceptional. So he grew over 13 tons of grass there last year. He's on course to hit it this year, even though he is struggling with drought there for the last 2 months. So rainfall has been low. I think he measured that he only got 25 mil of rain in June or July, and there's only 10 mil of rain so far in August. That's on his farm. So he is struggling with drought. But look, he is operating, so he's a very good grassland farmer. He's also a farmer that is innovative, so he'll try new things out. So this year or last year he put in a red clover silage sward into the farm, and this year he put another 5 acres in it. So look, at the walk we'll see how the red clover is performing. So that's one of the things. The other thing is he's a very good beef farmer in his own right. He's finishing his cattle, so his bullocks, so all his steers are finished at 24 months, and his heifers are finished at 20 months. And the key to that is grazing setup. So his grazing infrastructure. He's able to move cattle on every 3 days. Very simply, he can move them on. He's just a very good grass manager. Another key to it is how he can get cattle out early. So he's well able to get cattle out. It's a dry farm, but he's well able to get cattle out from the end of January onwards. And he does practice on-off grazing, which is unusual for a beef farmer, but he does practice on-off farm grazing to get cattle out. You'll see his average daily gains are very good. So a lot of that weight gain is coming from grass. He's a short winter, but the silage that he's feeding, he's targeting a 74 DMD silage plus. So that the average daily gain over the winter is good. Look, what other farmers will see is the cattle that he's finishing. So he has drafted animals for finishing. So he has heifers that are going to be finished in the next 10 days. So we'll probably just see them before they head off. So see what weights they're being slaughtered at, and then we'll see bullocks. So he has 40 bullocks. So they're not all. So the type of cattle he's on the farm is a mix of traditional breeds, so your Angus and your Herefords. But the main bulk of stock on the farm is black and white bullocks. So he's finishing a lot of his bullocks with it between 20 and 23 months of age, Frisian bullocks. So we can see how he's been able to do that. So at the moment, he has 40 bullocks drafted for finishing. So they're on 5 kilos a meal and on a red clover silage. And a lot of them bullocks are actually black and white. So these cattle, it's not just that your traditional early maturing bullocks can be finished at 24 months of age. He's finishing black and white bullocks at 24 months of age as well. So look, he's very open. So look, I think John Maher there'll be 5 different boards on the day. So the first board will be looking at his systems. So the system that he's operating. So he's a bullock system and a heifer system. So anyone who's thinking of getting into these systems, it'd be well worth coming. The second board will be looking at red clover and white clover. So how is the red clover performing on the farm? And then also he's looking. So he has bought a 9-block type machine. So he's actually incorporating white clover swords into existing swords at the moment. And look, it's working well for him so far. So this is the first year he's doing it. But there is a good establishment in the distribution of white clover on the farm. The third board we will be looking at is looking at how he has reduced the age of slaughter. So if you look at it, had his performance 10 years ago, a lot of his cattle were being killed over 30 months of age. So he's come that down for heifers 20 months and steers 24 months. So what that board will go through is how he's come to reduce the age of slaughter without affecting overall farm performance. The fourth board will be looking at grass 10, so John Maher will be on that board, and he'll be talking, going through the steps how Aidan has grown the grass that he's grown. And then the fifth board, David Argue, so he's the local Teagasc advisor working with Aidan Maguire. He's going to just show how the grazing infrastructure was set up, that allows optimal farm performance, but also how it helps him with the management stock. So he's a one-man operation with help from his son, who's working on an off-farm job. But mainly, if he wants to move livestock or bring them in for dosing, it's a one-man job. So how he set up his paddocks and how he set up an unconventional road type that allow cattle to be moved very easily from one side of the farm to the next, if he has any work to do. So look, there's lots for lads to see, whether it's coming from the beef end of things, seeing how his performance or how much grass is growing, or how he's getting on with red clover swords and white clover swords. So look, there's plenty for farmers to see.
Definitely something for all farmers to visit the farm on the 31st of August. And I suppose finally, Joseph, for farmers that are listening and that are managing grass well on their farms and achieving high levels of utilisation, this year's competition has been launched for 2022. What advice have you for any listener that's interested in applying?
Yeah, Catherine. So look, I suppose the objective of the Grassland Farmer of the Year, the competition is to promote grazing excellence amongst all Irish livestock farmers. And look, as you just heard there from Fergal, Aidan Maguire is a perfect example of this. It recognises the farms who are achieving high levels of grass utilisation in a sustainable manner. And there's a number of categories, Catherine, for your listeners to apply for, such as the Drystock, the overall award, the Clover Sustainable Farming Award, Heavy Soils, Young Farmer, and Organic Farmer to enter. So the form is currently on the Teagasc Grass 10 page and on the Teagasc public website, with a closing date of the 31st. So if any of your listeners are achieving, high levels of grass utilisation or doing something innovative on the farm, have a quick talk with your local Teagasc advisor and get your application form in before the deadline of the 31st.
Thanks very much, Joseph, and thanks, Fergal. We look forward to attending the walk on the 31st of August.
Thank you.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Fergal and Joseph for joining me on the show. We are currently running a survey to find out how the Beef Edge podcast is of use to you, and if you could click on the link in the episode notes to complete the survey, it will help us improve the show. In the meantime, you can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan and thanks for listening.